So it looks like the Department of Justice has sided with Asian American students alleging discrimination at Harvard. And this is the story we're going to look at, but we're going to riff a little bit because I had a conversation with some race realists in Berkeley. This was early last year, so like a year and a half ago. And they were telling me that they felt that some races were smarter than others. And it was funny because, well they were also saying, because it was a mixed race group of race realists, and there was a black guy among them. And they said that recognizing nation-level statistics doesn't mean you treat the individual any different. They just believe in certain things. And so I was like, the definition of racism in Merriam-Webster is positive or negative discrimination, and typically with the belief that one race is superior. So you could argue that race realism is racist if you're saying one race is superior. But what I was told basically is that saying someone is more intelligent or shorter or more susceptible to diseases doesn't mean anyone is better than any other, just different. And that's what they told me what it meant. But the funny thing about it was that they said to me that Koreans this is what I was told, I don't know if it's true. They told me that Koreans are the second smartest group on the planet. They told me that Ashkenazi Jews are number one and Koreans are number two, according to, I think this might be like the Charles Murray book. Admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about this, but this is what they argued. And I find it funny because I was like, you're actually arguing that white people are not as smart as other groups. And they were like, yes. And there's a reason I bring this up. Because I am part Korean and part white, which means I'm kidding. That's not why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up because according to affirmative action, they're treating Asians exactly as you would expect the racists to treat Asians, right? This idea, technically, if the idea among the race realist groups is that Koreans and Asians are smarter on average or have higher IQs than, say, white people, then you would expect them to be weighted down a little bit in terms of taking their tests because, so we're talking about affirmative action, right? The Asian Americans are alleging that Harvard is keeping them out, and if they were treating people equally and not letting people in based on race, that Asians would be a much higher density within Harvard. So here's what ends up happening. Whether or not the left wants to admit, or I should say agree with, I don't know enough about the science, and personally I disagree with a lot of it. I could be wrong, but that's not the point. The point I'm making is, if the left is going to say the race realists are incorrect, but enact policies that actually treat Asians as though they are advantaged over other races, then I'm like, you're kind of in agreement with these people, you just don't want to admit it, which is the weirdest thing. I disagree with affirmative action, for the most part. For one, because Asian Americans are a minority and they're discriminated against. And I think it's just screwed up if somebody works their whole life to try and get into school and then they're told, well, because of the color of your skin and, features of your body, we're not going to let you in. That's not okay. That's not cool. Racism is a bad thing. Asians are a minority. But in this instance, Harvard is actually basically Asian people have to score a lot higher on the SATs if they want to get into certain schools. They're penalized. I don't know exactly why, but the point I'm trying to make, and maybe I'm not being clear, is that if you're going to argue for discrimination based on race and then penalize those that are deemed more likely to get in, your statistics that you are using for affirmative action are in line with the race realists. And I have to imagine you're racist. But let's look at this story real quick. So this is Fox News. The Justice Department filed court documents Thursday morning, siding with a group of Asian American students who allege Harvard discriminates against their race in its admissions process. The statement of interest was filed in an ongoing case in federal court in Massachusetts. No American should be denied admission to a school because of their race. As a recipient of taxpayer dollars, Harvard has a responsibility to conduct its admissions policy without racial discrimination by using meaningful admissions criteria that meet lawful requirements, Attorney General Jeff Sessions said in a statement. The Department of Justice has the responsibility to protect the civil rights of the American people. This case is significant because the admissions policies at our colleges and universities are important and must be conducted lawfully. Yes, this is a country that upholds the rights of the individual. And it is not okay, in my opinion, for someone to be kept out of a university because of their race or penalized on their test results. And this is a fact. The left and the right both acknowledge this is a true phenomenon, that Asians are penalized something like 400 SAT points. They have to get 400 points higher than a white person in order to actually get into a university, or to Harvard specifically. Students for Fair Admissions filed the suit, claiming the prestigious university discriminates against Asian Americans. DOJ officials noted that Harvard receives millions of dollars in taxpayer funding every year while agreeing not to discriminate on the basis of race. The government said the plaintiffs have presented compelling evidence that Harvard's use of race unlawfully discriminates against Asian Americans, urging the court to grant the plaintiffs the opportunity to prove these claims at trial. How is it that the left that claims to be anti-racist would support a policy that we know discriminates against people based on their race? It's almost like the people who are claiming they're not racist are just claiming they're not racist and are actually very racist. The statement of interest specifically argued that Harvard acknowledges using race as a factor in admissions as part of affirmative action, but alleged the university has failed to carry its demanding burden to show that its use of race does not inflict unlawful racial discrimination on Asian Americans. Harvard, meanwhile, has defended its policies. Harvard will continue to vigorously defend its right and that of all colleges and universities to consider race as one factor among many in college admissions, which has been upheld by the Supreme Court for more than 40 years, a Harvard spokesman told Fox News earlier this summer. And it was. Apparently, there was a ruling a couple of years ago that the Supreme Court reaffirmed universities can use race in determining whether or not you can come into a school. And I gotta say, I don't know how that one got to the Supreme Court, because that's mind-blowing to me that schools are literally allowed to discriminate against people based on their race. And for some reason, this is a left-wing supported policy. I just don't understand. Liberal groups blasted the Justice Department. The Sessions Justice Department intervention in this case opposes constitutionally sound strategies that colleges and universities are using to expand educational opportunity for students of all backgrounds, said Vanita Gupta, president of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. This is one more example of the administration's contempt for efforts to build a more inclusive, just society. According to the lawsuit against Harvard, Asian Americans consistently rated lower on subjective categories such as courage, as well as personality, which decreased their chances of being accepted. But the school said its comprehensive analysis showed no discrimination. So according to the lawsuit, they're saying that whoever was doing these admissions process were saying that Asian Americans, I did a story about this before. Asian Americans apparently have bad personalities, they're antisocial, they're not courageous, they're frail, things to that effect, and that's racist. So when I see things like this, where you're literally going to take groups by race and rank them and tell them this is what they deserve and this is what they're going to get, that's, oh my God. I've talked about like this idea of balkanization, but when I was at Occupy Wall Street, I watched them create voting blocks. That means like political voting within the group based on your race. And I feel like that's the future we're heading towards. I don't like so there's a challenge here, right? Because part of this lawsuit says that if Harvard doesn't discriminate, then Asians become the overwhelming majority of the student body. That's if they just went on academic criteria. Okay, well, that's a problem too, because we don't want race segregation. We don't want only one race here, only one race there. We want people to, we want to be a melting pot. We want everyone to have equal opportunity, and thus is the conundrum. If we say that we're just going to go by hard stats, then you're going to have an overwhelmingly Asian student body. But what's the alternative? We can't just be like, okay, then no Asians allowed. If Asians have a culture that for some reason results in them getting better test scores, I mean, that's the stereotype, right? That Asian parents are driving their kids to be better students and all that stuff. If that's part of their culture, then they're going to do better. Should Asians as a whole be punished simply because there are a higher density of Asians who do well? I'll take time to point out that my mom math tutored me and my siblings from a very young age. And this is a funny story, actually, because I was making a point about YouTube demonetization and how even my mom, who makes math YouTube videos, gets demonetized, so I don't think it's on purpose. Lauren Southern, I can't remember in what context, but she said something like, "Why am I not surprised that your mom makes math videos?" And I laughed my ass off, and my mom laughed her ass off. And it's just stereotype race-based joke about my heritage. I thought it was funny. I didn't get offended by it. We all thought it was funny. And Lauren was obviously being facetious and not trying to be mean or anything. It was a good joke. But what I'm trying to make is maybe there is something to this, because I'm really good at math, and I've been good at math my whole life. And it could just be because my mom taught me math at a very young age. But because I am part Asian, should I be penalized? The answer is no. Because what are we really saying if that's the case? Someone might work. What if someone was adopted and they were Asian? Like imagine this. Imagine someone is raised by a black family, but they're Asian. They were adopted. And they weren't well off. They were lower middle class and worked really, really hard. And finally, this person wants to go to school and they said, but you're Asian. Get out. You don't write that enough because you're Asian. That's not cool. And this is the big problem with making policies based off people's race. You eventually punish people who have done nothing wrong simply because they look a certain way. I don't understand how we could have fought so hard for civil rights, and then you actually have the people on the left who claim they're against racism and for civil rights advocating for policies that restrict access based on people's race. That's got to be a terrifying future, if I might add. Not a future I really want to be a part of. But we'll see what ends up happening with this because, as I mentioned, the last time this happened, the Supreme Court said universities can do this. I can't believe that happened. I would have assumed the Supreme Court's going to be like, you can't discriminate based on race, but apparently they were allowed to. So anyway, that's it for today. I'm wiped out. I will see you guys all tomorrow at 4 p.m. on the main channel. Thanks for hanging out.